with it being the 1 year anniversary of my daughter Alyssa's passing, in a way it's me having to, and Alyssa's family having to relive it again. Obviously, November 17th of 2021 was not just the worst day of my life, but the worst day of Alyssa's family and her close friends. And I didn't know the impact that the 1 year would have on me personally, but at the end of last week and this past weekend, I'm telling myself, okay, the week is almost here. And how will I handle that? It's been difficult. I have a lot of faith. I do rely on my faith. It's really helped me out. So with Alyssa's death, I never wanted it to be quiet. Never wanted her death to be swept under the rug. I wanted to be as transparent as possible and to keep her legacy going, to keep her name where people will remember it, and whether it's someone that's a drug addict, someone that has a strained relationship with her dad, or anyone. Alyssa, her story, her life, it really changed other people's lives. It changed drug addicts. It saved many drug addicts' lives, and I know that because I've had drug addicts reach out to me privately and say, hey, because of your daughter's story, I've stopped using drugs, or I've gotten help. Or a dad or a daughter that have reached out to me throughout this last year and have told me, I reached out to my dad, or a dad that's reached out to their daughter, because tomorrow is not promised.
Does that make it any easier, I guess, knowing that you lost your daughter, but knowing that her death saved other people, or is it just kind of something that you're like, you take it because it's there?
It does. It makes it easier knowing that Alyssa, this is the first year, but the 5th year and the 10th year and the 20th year, my goal and my purpose is going to be to make sure that she's not forgotten about. I know, to be realistic, that when some people pass away, they're forgotten about. No one visits the cemetery. No one talks about the life that they lived, but I don't want that to be the story with Alyssa. So the fact that people still talk about her today, it means a lot to me. It means a lot to her family.
Can you tell us a little bit about her day-to-day struggle and when you first realized that she had a problem and that she was dealing with a lot of her issues?
Her behavior would change. I wouldn't hear from her as much. She was a daddy's girl. Regardless of what her mom thought, she was a daddy's girl. She loved her dad. And so for us not to talk for a lengthy period of time, I knew maybe that something was wrong. Now, obviously, Alyssa had gotten older. She was an adult. And sometimes life will take you to where you don't always talk to your mom or your dad every day. Our relationship wasn't the best. There were times when our relationship was strained. But, Alyssa, as we all do, she had a weak moment. We've all had weak moments, and a weak moment, unfortunately, took her life November 17th of last year. And so, but she was a wonderful person. She'd passed her real estate exam. Everyone loved Alyssa, but more importantly, Alyssa loved everyone. She would lift so many people's spirits, regardless of what Alyssa was going through. She made sure she had a big smile on her face. Alyssa, ultimately, she changed the world.
When she first started struggling, what age was that?
I would say her late teens and early 20s.
Late teens, early 20s, and then she passed away at what age?
She passed away at the age of 26.
Okay, so about maybe 7 or 8 years of struggle.
Right, but it would be off and on.
Okay.
Alyssa would turn her life around and she would do well. As I said, she passed her real estate exam. I remember when she passed her test, she called me. She was so excited. And then when she sold her first house, she sends me a picture of her and the people that she sold the house to, and just such a beautiful, beautiful young lady. I think the world knows not just the outward beauty of Alyssa, but also just her heart and how people just really were drawn to her just because of her heart and her personality.
And recently got baptized.
She did. That was one of the things. Alyssa was baptized a few months before she passed away. She was at the Harbor Home in Conway, Arkansas, which is a faith-based home for women coming out of addiction. And she was flourishing there. She was doing so well. She got a job. She got her vehicle back. She was happy. And one of the things that Alyssa would say was, "Daddy, I got this." And Alyssa, she did. She had it up until the night that she passed away. Alyssa was doing great, but she had this weak moment. And I can't stress to people enough, some of those weak moments can take your life. And when you're talking about drugs and fentanyl and heroin, unfortunately, it took my daughter Alyssa's life. Worst day ever for me and for our family.
And if you're comfortable, and I know it can be very difficult, so only if you're comfortable, can you walk me through that day when you first found out, and kind of with the bits and pieces of information that you have, what happened?
Well, actually, I'll start with the night before, which was November the 16th. It was a Tuesday night, and Alyssa and I planned on seeing each other the following day, which was November 17th. When she got off work, she worked at Stobie's in Conway. She called me, but she sounded different. Alyssa did not sound herself, like something was wrong. And I know Alyssa's voice. I know how we had talked days and days before that. I went to bed very uneasy with the feeling that something happened or something might happen. The morning of November the 17th, I'm at work, and my phone rings, and it says the Harbor Home, which is where Alyssa lived. And I froze because I didn't want to answer the phone, because I'm asking myself, why isn't Alyssa calling me from her phone? Why is she calling me from the Harbor Home? So one of the first things, quite honestly, that I thought is maybe Alyssa got into some trouble the night before, and the Harbor Home was calling me to let me know, hey, this is what happened with Alyssa. So I answered at the last minute, and it was one of the house parents from the Harbor Home that said, Mr. Norman, Alyssa overdosed last night. So my response was, where is she? I want to come and see my daughter. And the answer I received was, Alyssa, she passed away. She didn't make it. And I remember dropping my phone, and my head hit the steering wheel of my police car, and luckily I had a couple of fellow officers that were parked next to me, and a lot of that after that is a blur. I do remember my wife driving me to the Harbor Home in Conway, and it's like everything went into slow motion. Alyssa's mom was there, Alyssa's stepdad, and everyone from the Harbor Home, but it was so quiet. When I got out of the car, I see the coroner and I see the deputies, and you could hear a pin drop. And then this is something that I can never unsee, but when they carry Alyssa's body out in a white body bag, I went into police mode like I was on duty. The only way I knew how to protect my emotions in my brain is to pretend like, okay, I'm working, I'm on duty, this is not my daughter Alyssa, I need to be getting information. And still today, Faith, I haven't had the cry that I want to cry. I want to. And maybe it'll happen soon, maybe it may not ever happen. But then, the days after that, going to Alyssa's visitation and going to Alyssa's funeral, I never sat in the front row. I never wanted to sit in the front row. And when people walk up to you and hug you and tell you that they're sorry, some of it still doesn't even seem real. Alyssa should be here. Alyssa had so much more to offer this world. But God was ready for her. And what's really powerful about this story is that Alyssa and I had this on-again, off-again relationship, but she wrote me a letter in June of last year. She told me where she was at the Harbor Home, and she said, Dad, I miss you. And I went to see her, and we made up for so much lost time in about 4 months. So now thinking back on it, I know God knew what he was doing. Alyssa needed her dad, and I needed Alyssa before she went back home, so to speak. And we had a lot of fun. We went to the state fair. We ate some good food. It's something that I don't really want to have to process, but I need to. Anytime a parent loses their child, I don't know that anything can even compare to that. Alyssa was Daddy's girl, and she's not here, but she's still changing the world by her story and people that are fighting every day to avoid drugs and to not give in.
And I know, what do you want people to understand when it comes to addiction and people overdosing? And you talked about those weak moments, and I'm not sure, if what she took was fentanyl related or anything like that. But in what you were able to process with what happened to her, what do you want people to know?
And I'm okay with sharing that Alyssa passed away from what was categorized from the coroner's office as fentanyl intoxication. It was an accidental overdose. When Alyssa, November 16th, I know that Alyssa was planning on going to bed and waking up the next day. She wasn't planning on passing away. We had plans the next day. I had plans to go spend time with her. But what I want people to know is that the drugs that are out today, not just in Arkansas, but across the United States, it can take you in a snap of a finger. And for young people out there, don't give in. Don't take drugs. And even for adults, if you're taking drugs, make sure you know what you're taking. So many drugs are laced with fentanyl and with heroin. And Alyssa didn't suffer. Alyssa she stopped breathing. So I guess if there's any consolation to Alyssa passing away, it was quietly and peacefully. But
it wasn't her intent to not be here.
Not at all.
That's the biggest thing, is that even when people are saying like, oh, I had a hard day and I just need to knock the edge off a little bit or just take something, you're never sure what maybe is in the pill or anything like that, and sometimes that's it.
And if you're getting it from a stranger, from someone you don't know well, unless you're getting it from a doctor and it's prescribed. I didn't take drug addiction and the use of fentanyl and heroin and other drugs as serious as I should have while Alyssa was still here. And I'm no expert. I am a police officer, but it doesn't make me an expert. But me and Alyssa's mom and Alyssa's family, we're in a category now that really you don't even really have a name for this category. You're a parent, or a brother or a sister, or aunt or uncle, or a grandma or grandpa that you lost someone that was so close to you. And it is a cruel world. This world can be really, really mean, but I was raised to be nice to people. Alyssa was raised to be nice to people. And she was changing lives. Even at the Harbor Home, the women out there looked up to her. They loved her. She passed away at a place that she loved, and she passed away believing in God, and something that really makes me feel good.
How are you processing your grief? I feel like grief is something that it's a journey, and it's kind of always there, and it's something that you just kind of have to deal with, and you find different outlets maybe. I know that you're big into the community and trying to make sure that Alyssa and her life isn't forgotten. So how are you processing your grief and just working through everything?
So initially when Alyssa passed away, I ran as fast as I could from grief until I saw a therapist. And I learned that you don't run from grief. You meet grief halfway. Even hold hands with grief and walk with grief. The more grief you have for someone shows how much you love them. In a way, I still feel like part of me is still in shock. The first few months after Alyssa passed away, it was hard to get one foot out of the bed and to get up and go to work. Being a police officer holds a lot of responsibility, and to go to work, it helped me some because I was back in the community. But I can remember the first time I went on an overdose call, and someone that's carried out in a body bag. Obviously, I'm having flashbacks of Alyssa. And so it's not easy. I don't know that it's ever going to be easy, but I know that I've learned a lot about grief and about heartache. And there's really no easy fix. With me, it's my faith and my family and my close friends, and I've counted on them. And I know Alyssa's watching. I know that Alyssa doesn't want me to be sad. I know that Alyssa has made so many friends in heaven, and she's well known up there, just like she was down here. I remember when I had a heart attack, almost 4 months to the day that Alyssa passed away. I know that God saved my life, and I know that the medical personnel saved my life. But the person that saved my life the most was my daughter, Alyssa. And I could hear Alyssa saying in my ear, "Not today, Dad."
That is incredible. I feel like I'm like tearing up over here, but what, you know, you're an officer and these are calls that you kind of deal with all the time, and you know, you're risking your life every day. Does it feel like, I know you talked about this a little bit, does it feel surreal, and does it feel like, how could this have happened to me? Like, I mean, losing a child is something that a parent never wants to go through, and these are conversations that, you know, you have all the time, you know, at your job, and you know the signs to look for when people are battling addiction and stuff like that. Do you ever struggle with, how did this happen? Or is it something that, you know, you want people to understand and say, addiction doesn't look like anything. Someone can look healthy, seem happy, but behind closed doors, they're still struggling. I mean, how are you processing the how, and how did this happen?
Well, you know, you've heard the saying that this won't ever happen to me. And I never thought Alyssa would leave us. If Alyssa was to leave us, she had fought so hard with her drug addiction, and she was on her way back to the Alyssa that we all knew. So to receive that phone call on November the 17th was a shock to so many people. You know, we spent so much time together the last few months, and so it was just sent shockwaves across me, our family, the community, because no way, there's no way, you know. So, you know, I guess to answer your question, I'm still in disbelief. I'm still in shock. I still want to wake up in the mornings and Alyssa be there. But I know that she's in a better place. But addiction, doesn't matter who you are, the color of your skin, how big your house is, how well liked you are, how many people you think love you. But addiction, drugs, they love no one. They're here to take people's lives away. And it's something that since some people tell me that, oh, it's a losing battle, it's not a losing battle, but we all have to work together to fight addiction and encourage people. If there's a drug addict out there that's your friend or your son or your daughter, don't give up and don't turn your back. It's easy to do that, but you can't, because the next encouraging word, or the next I love you, the next hug, the next phone call, the text, you give that person hope that they want to come and live the next day.
And I know you have your button here with Alyssa. I'm sure probably trying to do different events, speaking out, you know, against drugs and addiction and trying to inform people. What are some of those things that you have in the works or have done since you passed away?
So I probably publicly spoke to maybe 5 or 6 groups. It's still difficult. Alyssa wrote a letter to me in June of last year saying that she missed her dad, and she never thought that relationships between dads and little girls should ever be broken. That's the letter that brought us back together. If Alyssa wouldn't have mailed that letter, there could have been a really good chance that we wouldn't have been talking, and I would have received a phone call that she'd passed away. I'm still trying to process. You know, this is the first 1-year anniversary. So nothing planned for this year because it's the hurt is still there. But if my heart will heal a little more each day, I do want to use my platform to take a stand to fight drug addiction, encourage people that are addicted to drugs, that there is help out there and people that do care.
And my last question for you, because we're wrapping up here, but I don't think addiction is easy for anyone that's actually going through it. And I think people want to knock it. They want to not be this person. And it's also not easy for parents who have to actually see their child struggling, and you can tell them one thing, you can tell them, this isn't good for you, but it's an addiction, and they try to knock it, and sometimes they don't. If you had any encouraging words for parents who might be dealing with, their kids who are battling addiction, who maybe have given up on them, maybe it's a revolving door, what would that advice be?
Well, I know that all too well, the revolving door, a child that gets help, and they get help again and get help again and get help again, and it just, it takes a lot of willpower, not only for the person that needs help, but also for parents. I can totally understand how a mom or a dad or a family could be frustrated and upset at their child who's a drug addict. But I don't know what it's like to be an addict. I never will. So I don't know the battle that drug addicts are facing, but I do know that love and hope can conquer a lot. And that with just the support, you've got to continue to be there. I know parents reach out to me and say, hey, I've tried everything. I'm not talking to my child anymore. They may have to hit rock bottom before they can actually get help. And so there's no easy fix. There's not just this formula out there that exists that is going to make things better. But as far as parents out there or family, don't give up. I know some days it's probably easy to give up, but don't, because that person needs you.
Is there any specific memory that you feel like you're going to miss out on, whether that's a wedding or, being able to see her have kids, more than one kid, or spending Christmases, Thanksgiving? Are there any moments where you feel like, oh my God, addiction, like you did this to me and I'm missing out on these specific memories? Is there anything like that you feel like?
Well, I think one of the biggest things I'm going to miss and regret is God brought Alyssa and I back together about 4 or 5 months before she passed away. We were getting really close. We were talking. We were catching up. Alyssa was a mom. She has her son who's 3 years old now. So I'm going to miss watching her be a mom. I'm going to miss the holidays, going to her wedding, just watching Alyssa be Alyssa, watching Alyssa flourish. The wristband I have on here says, "Do it for Alyssa." And do it for Alyssa can mean anything. It could mean smile at someone, give someone a big hug, tell someone you love them, even a stranger, and fight drug addiction.
Great. And so, last question, I promise.
Oh, I'm fine.
Last question. How are you, like with her son, what conversations do you guys have about mommy and where she is now and trying to keep her memory?
So currently I'm not seeing her son. It's a long story, but I guess if I was able to, I remember when we were at the visitation, I told her son, my grandson, that mommy worked a long night and she's asleep. And so I do hope that one day, whenever her grandson grows up, that he'll realize how special his mom was. I know he has memories of her now, and she was a great mom. She was doing so well. And that's why it's such a shocker, is because you just never know. You never know when you think someone is doing well and they're battling and they're winning. The next morning when you wake up, you don't think you're going to receive a call that your baby girl, who's going to always be your baby girl, passed away from drug poisoning. And it's crushed a lot of families and it's broken a lot of hearts. And if we don't fight this battle of drug addiction, it's going to break so many more hearts.
Because the fight isn't over.
No.
People still dealing with this every day.
Every day, right now as we speak. Right now as we speak. And you just can't lose hope. You can't lose hope. Even after Alyssa's death, I haven't lost hope. I haven't lost hope because of Alyssa, because I know that she would be disappointed if I did.